By 1880, the American saloon was more than a bar. It was a sanctuary, a courthouse, a hiring hall, and a breeding ground. Beneath swinging doors and oil lamps, men drank from shared glasses rinsed in filthy water. Spittoons overflowed. Floors absorbed blood, whiskey, and vomit alike. In the back rooms, deals were struck, elections influenced, and infections quietly spread. The saloon promised fellowship. What it often delivered was violence, addiction, and disease. In the decades after the Civil War, the United States industrialized at staggering speed. Railroads cut across plains. Cattle towns appeared almost overnight. Mining camps erupted in the Rockies. With mobility came isolation, and with isolation came demand for drink, for company, for relief. The saloon answered that demand. In cities like Chicago, New York City, and frontier towns such as Dodge City, saloons multiplied rapidly. By some estimates, major American cities had one saloon for every few hundred residents. These establishments were rarely elegant. Most were narrow, dimly lit, and built for speed, quick drinks, quick cash, quick exits. Their architecture reflected their purpose. Swinging doors preserved anonymity. Long bars maximized throughput. Mirrors amplified light and ego. But beyond the facade, something darker flourished. The whiskey of 1880 was not always what it claimed to be. Industrial alcohol production had expanded, but regulation lagged behind. Unscrupulous suppliers diluted spirits with turpentine, tobacco juice, burnt sugar, even sulfuric acid for color. Rotgut was not metaphor, it was diagnosis. Beer was safer in theory boiled during brewing, but storage conditions invited contamination. Refrigeration was primitive. Barrels sat in warm rooms. Flies gathered. Customers drank quickly, often from communal cups or poorly rinsed glasses dunked in the same cloudy basin. Germ theory was only beginning to gain traction in American medicine. The work of Louis Pasteur was known in scientific circles, but public hygiene standards lagged. Disease did not require intention. It required proximity, and saloons specialized in proximity. Chewing tobacco was ubiquitous. Patrons spat freely onto floors layered with sawdust meant to absorb liquid and mask odor. That sawdust was rarely replaced with the frequency one might hope. Tuberculosis, then called consumption, spread through droplets and close quarters. Influenza, pneumonia, and gastrointestinal illnesses thrived in enclosed, poorly ventilated rooms thick with smoke. The spittoon became a symbol of the era. Positioned strategically along the bar, it collected saliva, phlegm, and sometimes blood. When kicked over, as often happened during fights, the content spread across boots and hems. Few establishments employed systematic cleaning. Water itself could be contaminated. In rapidly growing cities, sewage infrastructure struggled to keep pace. Outbreaks of cholera earlier in the century had demonstrated the lethal consequences of contaminated water. Yet enforcement remained inconsistent. The saloon was not uniquely diseased. It was uniquely concentrated. Alcohol lowers inhibition. In the volatile environment of 1880 America, that mattered. Many patrons were transient laborers, railroad workers, cowboys, dockhands, men paid in cash, often irregularly. The saloon became the first stop after wages were distributed. Gambling tables stood beside the bar. Disputes escalated quickly. In frontier towns, gunfire was not rare. The mythology of the West romanticizes these moments, but the reality was often squalid and abrupt. A perceived insult, a rigged card game, an unpaid debt, any could end in blood. Urban saloons were not immune. Political gangs used them as headquarters. In neighborhoods of New York City, ward bosses dispensed favors and enforced loyalty from behind bar counters. The saloon was a theater where masculinity, status, and desperation collided. Violence was not an accident. It was a byproduct of the environment. The saloon's power extended beyond intoxication. Political machines understood that influence flowed where men gathered. Organizations like Tammany Hall relied on saloons to mobilize voters. Bartenders doubled as political brokers. Free drinks secured turnout. Jobs were promised between rounds. In immigrant communities, the saloon provided familiarity. German beer halls, Irish public houses, and Italian cafes offered language, news from home, and employment connections. For many newcomers, the saloon was the only accessible social institution. This duality complicated reform efforts. To critics, the saloon symbolized vice and decay. To patrons, it was survival. Disease and democracy shared the same wooden counter. As evidence of alcohol's social cost mounted, domestic violence, workplace accidents, public disorder, organized resistance grew. The Women's Christian Temperance Union and later the Anti-Saloon League framed the saloon as a moral and biological threat. Women, barred from voting, exerted influence through activism. They argued that wages lost to drink meant children unfed, that diseases carried home from bars endangered entire households. Medical professionals began to link sanitation and public health more explicitly. Urban reformers called for inspections, licensing restrictions, and limits on operating hours. The saloon became a battlefield in a larger war. Who controls public space? Who defines morality? Who bears the cost of male indulgence? The debate was not only about alcohol, it was about power. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, municipal governments intensified regulation. Health codes improved incrementally. Licensing systems tightened. Scientific acceptance of germ theory altered public expectations. Shared drinking vessels gradually fell out of favor. Indoor plumbing improved sanitation. Ice production and refrigeration enhanced storage. Yet reform did not eliminate the saloon. It transformed it. Eventually, national prohibition would attempt eradication, but that lay decades ahead. In 1880, the saloon still stood dominant, reshaped slowly by pressure from reformers, doctors, and activists. Its decline was neither immediate nor complete, but its unchecked autonomy was ending. The legacy of the 1880 saloon endures in modern public health policy. Regulations on food and beverage safety, sanitation standards, licensing requirements, all emerged partly in response to environments like these. The understanding that private businesses can generate public health crises reshaped governance. Equally lasting was the recognition that social spaces influence political outcomes. The saloon demonstrated that architecture and atmosphere can mold behavior, encouraging solidarity or aggression, participation or exploitation. It forced America to confront an uncomfortable truth: freedom without structure can incubate harm. The saloon of 1880 was not merely dirty or deadly. It was revealing. It revealed how quickly opportunity can decay into exploitation when oversight lags behind growth. It revealed how loneliness can be monetized, how community can coexist with contagion, how pleasure can mask danger. Most of all, it revealed a paradox. At the heart of modern society, the spaces that bind us together can also weaken us. The swinging doors of the 19th century saloon have long since closed. The sawdust has been swept away, the spittoons discarded, but the question remains. When we gather in bars, online platforms, crowded cities, what invisible consequences accumulate beneath our feet? History suggests the answer is rarely clean and never harmless.